Okay, Rand Paul is going neocon, and unfortunately, a lot of people in the liberty movement are not picking up on this. I have to credit Robert Wenzel at the Economic Policy Journal for picking this up. Senator Rand Paul, U.S. must take strong action against Putin's aggression. And it starts, Vladimir Putin's invasion of Ukraine is a gross violation of that nation's sovereignty and an affront to the international community. His continuing occupation of Ukraine is completely unacceptable, and Russia's president should be isolated for his actions. It is America's duty to condemn these actions in no uncertain terms. It is our role as a global leader to be the strongest nation in opposing Russia's latest aggression. Putin must be punished for violating the Budapest Memorandum, and Russia must learn that the U.S. will isolate it if it insists on acting like a rogue nation. This does not and should not require military action. No one in the U.S. is calling for this, but it will require other actions and leadership, both of which President Obama unfortunately lacked. I recommend a number of specific and decisive measures to punish Putin for his ongoing aggression. Economic sanctions and visa bans should be imposed and enforced without delay. Hold up a second. Economic sanctions? Okay, you have to remember, Vladimir Putin, he is a former KGB operative. And how will Putin react, okay? You have to remember that he's not a weakling. And the United States does not have the same economic power that it did in the 80s under Reagan. I mean, yes, I wouldn't have approved of what he did, but you have to remember, if your economy is in dire straits and you want to act tough and you want to enact sanctions against the Russian leader, who was an ex-KGB guy, well, you've got to be crazy, because he's going to definitely retaliate. They own a bunch of our treasuries. You have to remember that, and they're partnering with China as well. So that's something to know, right? In regards to the petrodollar. Okay, and then he wants to ban Russians from coming into the United States. I mean, or ban visas. I'm not sure about that. There are many smart Russian scientists out there and engineers, and I wouldn't mind if they came over. But put that aside. It is important that Russia become economically isolated until all of its forces are removed from Crimea, and Putin pledges to act in accordance with the international standards of behavior that respect the rights of free people everywhere. We should also suspend American loans and aid to Ukraine, because currently these could have counterproductive effect of rewarding Russia. Okay, that's a good point. I don't believe in foreign aid. Okay, this is where he acts like an idiot, or which is stupid. I would reinstitute the missile defense shields President Obama banned in 2009 in Poland and Czech Republic. Only this time, I would make sure that the Europeans pay for it. The problem with the foreign policies of both Democrat and Republican administrations is they never give a second thought to how America can afford what they implement. Why do we want to start a new Cold War? I mean, if we start to put these missile defense shields, Putin's going to get aggressive again. I don't know if you guys remember, 2009, Putin was saying that, hey, we're going to send ships, I believe, to, I don't know, Cuba? Were they doing that? I have to look at that again, but it was reminding me of how another Cold War could start. And if we continue to play around with KGB thugs and operatives like this, it's going to end in not an end in a disaster. It's just going to bloat our military budget even more. And that's another problem. We spend too much on military here in the United States. Now I want to look at what Rand Paul said, I don't know, a few weeks ago. And I actually agreed with a lot what he said. Okay, look at this Washington Post. And this was posted on February 25th. And it's by Robert Costa. I think he's a reporter at the National Review as well. I'm not sure. He's always on CNBC. But I know he's on the he used to be on the National Review, or he still is on. But regardless, Rand Paul, GOP shouldn't tweak Russia over Ukraine. Senator Rand Paul of Kentucky, a presidential hopeful and leading non-interventionist voice in the Republican Party, believes that the United States should seek respectful relations with Russia and avoid antagonizing President Vladimir Putin over the ongoing political turmoil in Ukraine, where a Kremlin-backed government collapsed last week. Some on our side are so stuck in the Cold War era that they want to tweak Russia all the time. I don't think that's a good idea, said Paul on Tuesday in an interview with the Washington Post. Paul's comments underscored the latest foreign policy fissure in the GOP, where the party's libertarian wing and the Republican hawks have clashed over whether Putin is a threat and the future of U.S.-Russia relations. So he said that we shouldn't mess around with Putin. And then what does he say in that Time interview? Or in that Time... He says economic sanctions, right? Okay, this is not a third world country with a weak leader, okay? As much as I don't like Putin, I wouldn't want to mess with him. Sanctions? You've got to be kidding. The Russians are going to retaliate. If you know their culture, or if you know the culture of their leadership, they won't take stuff, especially ex-KGB operative. And this just goes to show you how Rand Paul, after winning the CPAC poll, just as his father used to win, is now flip-flopping. This is a red flag. And there are many times that I've praised Rand Paul. For instance, when he had that long filibuster, must have been a year or 2 years ago. But now, when it comes to some of his foreign policy, I don't trust this guy. And here's the deal, though. A lot of people in the mainstream media start attacking Paul and going after the Austrian school. And this is when I have to sometimes defend Rand Paul, because they call him all sorts of names and whatnot, and they go after his father, call him a racist, and that's clearly not true. And I want to show you some of the craziness going on in the media right now and attacking the Austrian school before I end this. So here's the deal, though. I mean, I see times where I get so fed up with Rand Paul, but then when I read these articles on the New York Times, right, say, you guys need to just read this article, how absurd it is. A horrible attack on the Austrian school and libertarianism. But it goes about Rand Paul's mixed inheritance. Just Google that. Long story short, it says that, hey, guess what? Rand Paul, he is number one associated with paleo-libertarianism, and also that emerges from the Ludwig von Mises Institute, that Lew Rockwell started. And goes later on to pretty much insinuate that libertarians are racist, and based on what Ron Paul said about the Civil Rights Bill and what Rand Paul believed, and they try to hide their views on this, is they opposed it, and they opposed it, one of the reasons because of property rights, not because that they're racist. But it goes on and attacks below the belt. And this is what you try to see, or this is what you usually see from the mainstream media, and this is when I have to defend Rand Paul and all these other guys when I really don't want to defend Rand Paul. I mean, obviously I'm going to defend Ron Paul, no doubt about that, but this is something to know. But regardless, this article is Rand Paul's mixed inheritance. Well, Rand Paul's views, you could say it's mixed. I don't know what the hell he stands for, to be honest. And that's a red flag, and that's why I can't vote for this guy. And I urge all you Ron Paul supporters, if you're going to vote in 2016, think twice.